Emergencies. We are in a code yellow.
Instrument landing system is down.
Backup systems won't come up.
Every system's dead.
These guys shut us down.
Attention all controllers. We have a code red alert. We just bought maybe 2 hours. After that, those planes low on fuel aren't going to be circling. They're going to be dropping on the White House lawn.
Hello, welcome to the Damien and Devlin Show, and this is our review of Die Hard 2. The 1990 sequel directed by Rennie Harlin, starring Bruce Willis, William Sadler, John Amos, Dennis Franz, and Bonnie Bedelia, to name a few, because there's quite a few people in this cast. Anyhow, no surprise when Die Hard became a surprise hit. It didn't take them long to put a sequel, a number 2 on it, and Die Hard 2 was born. And it was, this actually went on to make a lot more money than Die Hard did, because Die Hard made a lot of money at the theaters, but I think what made the movie a big hit was the fact that it hit cable and people watching it on video, and then it just became more of a phenomenon. So when Die Hard 2 came out, everybody was hungry for it, so Die Hard 2 actually made a lot more money than the original. And that's good because we got more Die Hard films. Well, some people would say that's good, other people wouldn't. It depends what you think of the Die Hard franchise. Damien picked this movie for us, and why don't you talk a little bit about Die Hard?
Damn right I picked this movie. I mean, going back to last Christmas when we watched my favorite Christmas movie of all time, Die Hard, of course we had to throw in another Christmas movie, Die Hard 2, with one of the best taglines of all time. I don't care what you say.
No, it's not.
Die Hard 2, Die Harder. Like, that's just so cool.
It's horrible.
It's awesome.
It's horrible. And you know what's worse? That they didn't commit and have the third one Die Hardest. You know, maybe I'd give it some credit if they went for the full trilogy and went Die Hardest.
Whatever. It's still cool. So yeah, I used to watch this movie a lot when I was a kid over at my grandparents' house. Of course with the first one and the third one. I think the three of them are a very good trilogy. And the fourth and fifth ones are for another time, but I think the three main original movies were really well done. Now, the second movie, I do remember being also set during Christmas time, which is why I chose this movie. And I remember, you know what, it's not the best. I still like it. But you mentioned that you hadn't seen it in several years.
No, I saw this at theaters because, like I said, I was a big Die Hard fan when the first one came out. And I think I've only seen this twice. I saw it in theaters, and I remembered I really liked it. And then I watched it, I think, once when I got the, the video cassette. And then I've owned the series, but I've never gone back to rewatch this one until tonight, so it was actually I was intrigued to see what I'd think of it because it's been so long. Now, for those of you who don't know, John McClane, Bruce Willis plays John McClane, a New York cop, and he winds up in another situation with terrorists that this time involves planes and a drug lord, I believe.
Yeah.
And basically they take over an airport, and more frighteningly, they take over a control center and actually play with the planes and keep them stuck in the sky on, once again, Christmas Eve. And John is pretty much all alone in this battle, even though he has a lot more allies on the ground. But
hold on, you're getting into your negatives already.
But I wasn't trying to say. Anyhow, this was the last Die Hard that did take place in Christmas, because after that he kind of... It didn't matter what season.
I think they've all been either spring or summer after this.
Well, I do know the third one is definitely summer because I remember it starts with Summer in the City and an explosion.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyhow, do you want to go into your positives of Die Hard?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, Die Hard 2, Die Harder. But John McClane, of course, Bruce Willis as John McClane, I love the character. And I think the early films, the first three, are him at his best.
Yes.
I think you even said in our original review of Die Hard, you could tell he was young and hungry and fresh and wanting to go at the script because he's got a great personality and he still goes at it with a lot of gusto and effort, whereas like the later Die Hards and even in his other later movies, he kind of has this like, I'm calm and I'm quiet, but I'm still a badass kind of personality. And it just really isn't the same. So again, I really like him in these early Die Hard movies. And I think, honestly, some of the action sequences that he's involved in this movie are really awesome and fun to watch. One of my particular favorites is when there's a group of airborne SWAT police going into like an area, and you see some of the terrorists, they're dressed up as painters, and then it turns into like this big ambush attack. Cameo by the guy that plays Liquid Terminator in Terminator 2, very young, and this came out before Terminator 2. And
Yeah, don't ask me his name, I always get it mixed up.
I can't remember his name either.
Robert Stewart or Robert.
I think,
I can't remember.
I think it's Robert Stewart.
No, I don't think it is.
Don't quote us on it.
No,
Don't quote us on it.
I always get him wrong because he's got a.
He's in it for like 5 minutes, but he still does an awesome job, and that whole action sequence is excellent. And you know what? I love the actor Dennis Franz, even though that's his name, right? Dennis Franz.
Dennis Franz.
Even though he plays the same character in every single TV show or movie that he's in, which is this hard-boiled New York stylish cop.
Well, some people might say that about Bruce Willis too in some ways.
Don't worry about that for now. But I love Dennis Franz because we were actually talking about it. He used to be in a show I used to watch all the time, NYPD Blue. And so he's in this movie too, which I really enjoy him in. Of course, there's a lot of neat visuals in this with regards to the planes. One particular shot that I really like is at the end where you actually see like a line of gasoline being lit on fire.
No spoilers.
No, I didn't say what happened with the line. You always say that when I don't spoil things.
Yeah, you totally did though.
I don't spoil things.
Okay.
I will tell you when I'm going to spoil something.
All right.
But there's a lot of cool visuals in this. I also really like the soundtrack as well. It's very reminiscent of the original Die Hard. It's different, but it's got the same kind of styles with that kind of like sing, 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 sing kind of sound. You'll know what I mean if you've seen the original Die Hard and also this one. So those are a lot of really good positives. It's an entertaining action film, especially around the Christmas season. It gives you warm feelings near the end. I'm sure that people can relate to that.
It's funny. I think you like this movie more than me, and I think I have more positives than you do.
Oh, really?
But which surprised me. Well, we'll start with Bruce Willis. This is he's at his best here, playing John McClane in the early three, especially. He really shines in this. Even though the script doesn't really help him in this one, whereas I raved about how intelligent the first one was. But Bruce Willis still has that charisma and charm. Sadly, in later movies, not just the Die Hard series, you get hit and miss with Bruce Willis. You can tell when he's coming for the paycheck or like he really wants to like show something. And sadly, we don't see that Bruce Willis much anymore, and I hope we do, because he's got some projects I'm intrigued by. But in this one, he still gives his all, even though he's now working with, as I get to my negatives later, he was working with a script that isn't quite as clever as the first one, but he still tries. And so that's a good thing. Everybody else does a pretty adequate job. I know you're going to talk about one, and I'll let you. I won't even touch that.
Art Evans, I'm coming for you.
Yeah. But anyhow, I think everybody else does their job. Like, they basically just play, people that are background characters, and that's it. Bonnie Bedelia doesn't get quite as much to do. She actually rubs me the wrong way in this movie.
Same.
Where in the first movie, I think she's awesome. I think she's actually like a really strong female character in the first movie. And this one, I think they just make her really annoying. Like, in the first movie, I was kind of happy when they reunited it. But in the second one, I kind of realized why they probably have... Like, I thought John was probably the problem of a lot of their marital problems, being a New York cop. But in the second one, I started realizing that, John's probably not it. I think we saw a little bit more of his wife than we needed to. But she's a wonderful actress, but she really doesn't get used enough. And when she does get used, I'll talk about that in my negatives. Positives. I told you I'm not going to rave about the script because I'm going to wait till the negatives, but I really think this is a good idea. When they came up with an idea for a terrorist thing, they had to top the great, Nakatomi Towers, which is a great idea. I love that they totally went for something different, and I like the plane aspect. Now, I can't remember the name of the novel, but apparently they took the story from a novel that wasn't a John McClane thing, but they bought the rights and just turned it into it. The only problem is it's just too big, and I think they had troubles with the script. But I love the idea, and I'm going to give it a positive, because there were moments I said, this is a really smart idea. When I see an action movie that's set in a certain location, I like when they use all aspects of the place. And you'll be surprised, there's a lot of action films that look like they're going to use all this stuff, and they stay only in central areas. I love an action movie that uses everything, and they use everything here from like the baggage claim to where the baggage is being sent, to the runways, to the control towers, and I love that. They hit a lot of places, and it gives me the feel of the airport, and I really like that. So I'll give that a plus. And I did like some of the action sequences, like the scene you said. Like the flames going up into the gasoline. I thought that was so well done. Yep. Even a cheesy scene that I know was cheesy. There's a scene involving a ejection scene. It's so badly done, and you can go. But I actually think it's funny, and probably the closest to a Die Hard from the original that they had. Because to me, that was just over the top and wonderful. Even though, it's looks totally fake, but I'm gonna
grenades.
Yeah,
ever.
that part's dumb. But and I never noticed how slow they were until this movie.
Holy crap! It's like a whole 30 seconds.
I think I've watched so many war movies with you. I know that grenades. Like I could have walked out of a plane at that time.
You got about 5 to 7 seconds if you're lucky.
Well, it's good he had about 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, no kidding.
But the action sequence I liked, and even though it is filmed kind of cheesy, I still thought it was pretty good. And that's my positives.
So, I can't wait to get into this. But all throughout the movie, something in the back of my mind was like, there's always something that I don't like about this movie. And I could never, up until now, put my finger on it. But now I've finally identified the root cause of my dislike at certain points for this movie. And that has to go to you. I'm talking directly to you, Art Evans, who plays...
He's not watching.
I'm sure he is, because he's out of work after this movie with how terrible his performance was. What's his character's name again?
Leslie Barnes.
Leslie Barnes. He's this, air traffic control engineering guy. And just the way that he talks and delivers his lines. And I'm not going to say things because I'm going to come off as insensitive or offensive. But he talks like an idiot. He just sounds like he's going over the top every single time. Like, literally somebody had to hold the script in front of him so he could get his lines right.
What I will agree with you on him is that I think he changed his tone way too much. Because one minute he sounded okay, and then the next minute he just had this weird, not an accent, but a weird style of talking that would disappear again when he was... And I'm like, if he stayed with the first tone that he had at the very beginning, it would have been all right.
He's talking like this all over the place, and oh my god, and then we're back to normal, and we need to make sure that we get to where we need to, because here we go again with the over-the-top acting, and what is going on?
Yeah, I don't know why Rennie Harlan didn't catch. If we could catch it watching it, but you said it took you a couple of viewings to get that, so, but I assume he would tell that, now he's getting into his high-pitched Mickey Mouse... a little slow.
It's just ridiculous. And, honestly, it's so bad. It's so bad. Oh, he's
good times.
Horrible. Absolutely ridiculous. I can't say anything more about how terrible
Please don't, because I'm on way of saying PlayStation.
Oh, my God. So,
inside jokes.
Art Evans... You can get out of my life because you're awful. Awful, awful actor. There's plot holes all over this script. Ridiculously. I touched on the grenades. Yeah. So the scene that we're talking about, John McClane gets trapped in an area. And a bunch of the terrorists throw grenades into where he is. And those grenades take a minute to 2 minutes to blow up.
Yeah.
And it gives him enough time. Yeah, he's lying on the ground. Gives him enough time to get up, put himself in the pilot seat, strap himself in, look around for a second, then grab the emergency eject lever. That's how long. And then it still takes a moment for him to get out with the emergency eject before the grenades go off. It's ridiculous. Like, I'm waiting there going, let's get on. Like, he should be dead. John McClane should have died like at least 5 times in this movie. And that's how ridiculous it is with regards to him. Now, I get it, he's the main character, you can't kill the main character. And that's fine. He falls off a moving plane in the air at one point. Dead. Like, dead. There's no doubt about it. The guy's dead. And so, just plot holes all over the place. The airport security is a laughable joke. John gets himself into the air traffic control center, and it's stated explicitly so many times, unauthorized personnel cannot be here, they can't get here. And you even made a comment, you're like, I know this is pre-9/11 airport security. And I came up with an excuse. I said, well, maybe John's throwing his badge around and allowing people to let him in. But then a reporter gets in there. The
fact that the reporter, she found a way in, it's just ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Like, there's no security anywhere with regards to this. And it's just ridiculous. As well, I don't believe...
There's even a baggage fight where there's a ton of gun flaw, and nobody ever shows up. Like, nobody's working in this huge warehouse. Nobody's there to call security or anything. They show up kind of like, oh, we better take a look.
Yeah.
And that's it. They actually look like they just accidentally decided, we better check.
Yeah. The whole plan of the terrorists is incredibly flawed. They take over the airport and they take over the communications so that they can hold the planes in the air hostage, essentially, to accomplish their goals. But they don't take over the phone lines. So there's nothing stopping these people from calling somebody, and eventually they do.
But it takes them a long time.
But it takes them over half the movie to call in the army as well. Okay? Here's another flaw with regards to this terrorist plan. Their whole plan at the end of the day is to get on a plane and fly into the sunset to whoever knows where. But don't you think that when you take off, now that you don't have anything as leverage anymore, that the Air Force is going to come in and shoot you down? The plan was destined to fail from the beginning. It's just ridiculous.
Actually, I'll tell you after. I'll tell you off camera for people who haven't seen this movie because it's a major spoiler, but I just thought of how this movie could have been totally eliminated in some ways for their plan, but I can't do it now, unfortunately. So if you want to know, you can email me or
respond to the comments.
Yeah, and I will talk to you, but I don't want to ruin it. But I just thought of a ridiculous thing that they could have done easily.
The plot points, and like I said, this movie is good. I like it. It's entertaining. But it kind of, if you look at the original trilogy, it starts really high up here with Die Hard, and it dips significantly, like the Grand Canyon, before coming back up again for the third one. It's not, the third one's definitely nowhere near the first one, but it's miles above the second one with regards to actual cohesive plot points. And I hate plots that don't make sense, and unfortunately, Die Hard 2 falls right into the pit where it just doesn't work. And I have to talk about just over-the-top zany characters, like the guy that John McClane finds in the basement of the airport. He reminded me of a real-life friend that we have. He's just over-the-top, like, look at me, I'm the guy that lives underground at this airport. Whoa, I'm zany. Like, that's how over-the-top he is.
Were we watching the same movie?
Yeah, we were.
I know he was a little off.
Hey,
but...
officer, get in my car! He's over the top. Ridiculous. You go ahead and talk about this script, because I'm going to butcher the plot points if I keep going.
No, what I'll say mostly about the script is, if you watch our Die Hard review, I think I called it one of the best action scripts because of the fact that they make the villains just as smart as John McClane. So whenever John gets the upper hand, there's always a clever technique that the villains do. And sometimes it could just be like they're thinking smart or a situation leads to that. And that's where we have our lack of Hans Gruber. we don't have a strong villain in this.
No.
Your main villain is William Sadler, and I'm not saying he doesn't do a good job, but we don't have a good development of the character. See, we didn't know much about Hans Gruber, but he was so charismatic and we got to see so much of him. And this script does not have that. This script has a couple of plot twists that are kind of neat, and it frustrates you, and then it explains, and you're like, okay, I'm not as frustrated because you kind of explained it, and I was bugging him through one, like, did they do that on purpose? Did they do that on purpose? Watch the movie, kept saying.
I just kept doing that.
Yeah, and it took so long, I kept saying, this does not explain what you said I was going to get answers to. And I finally did get my answers, but it was infuriating because the first one is so well done. Second of all, John McClane, in the first one, he's working alone except for the lone cop that's on the ground.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful kind of working relationship. On this one, there is no reason why John McClane is working by himself. There are so many people in the airport that they could let him work with, and nobody does. You think there would be one renegade? I kept thinking, this is almost a modern movie now. One person would come to somebody's help, and everybody else would just be like, that's peculiar. You know?
There's like, even as bad as the security is, like somebody there has got to be like, I want to help. I want to help.
Yeah, at
do
least Leslie Barnes would show up once in a while, even though he didn't do anything. He'd just be standing there.
It's also explicitly stated at the very beginning of the movie, when we're first getting into the airport with the reporter woman, she's talking to like Department of Defense people that are there waiting for this like drug lord to arrive, and they do nothing throughout the entire movie.
It takes them a long time just to say, okay, we've called the government, and they're finally going to come in. And it's just kind of an embarrassment.
Just call some cops or something.
So the script is pretty bad. Another thing I want to touch on is, I think one of the things they realized was that the first Die Hard had a lot of humorous moments because there were some great one-liners by Bruce Willis, but they were used sparingly in the first movie, which makes them classics. You know, yippee-ki-yay, something. You know, I won't continue because we're trying to keep it family. This movie actually puts a lot of one-liners in Bruce Willis.
I didn't want to say it, but he's also one of the over-the-top zany problems I have with this movie.
And the problem is Bruce Willis delivers them, but they hardly ever land. No. None of the jokes land, and it's almost sad.
The most awkward
because of the amount that they put in, and not one of them land.
The most awkward one is after the grenade fiasco. He comes down, another plot point by the way, he's coming down in his parachute, and the terrorists are all there staring at him. Like, they all have their submachine guns. Not one of them just has to go and take him down. So that plot point aside, but he lands, and the parachute's like all over him, and he tries to crack a one-liner. Where's the door? Like, it just felt so awkward.
And the last thing I'll touch on, because there's really a lot you can talk about. As you can see, Damien keeps thinking of more stuff. And he liked this movie more than me.
I do like this movie.
I guarantee you there'll be a higher point number on that side than this side.
First, so I can
but
make
first,
it higher.
since everybody seems to be offended by every little thing this Christmas, whether it's a song or a TV special.
Well, we're getting political now.
I just want to say that I'm kind of offended about the fact that when Bonnie Bedelia, her character, is mentioned to have assaulted someone or treating this man like crap, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, that's what the character is, but the fact that when a woman attacks a man, it's played as humor several times in this movie, I personally just thought, you know what? I don't think this is the kind of movie to get away with that kind of joke. And I just, maybe back in the 1990s, I thought, oh, isn't it hilarious? It's a callback. But I just found, you know what, in this day of age, I don't think it's right that, You know, if a guy assaulted a woman in a movie, it wouldn't be played for laughs, and I don't think it should be played for laughs. Like, literally, like, yeah, well, I took out 2 of his teeth. Do you want some champagne? Let's celebrate that.
Yeah.
And I personally, I'm going to just be offended. Normally, I wouldn't be offended by that, but 'tis the season. I'm in the mood, and I'm tired of everybody else getting a chance to be offended, so I'm going to be offended. Got any more to say about this script?
I could go on for hours about this whole movie, but you know what? I'm not going to offend myself by depreciating the entertainment and enjoyment I still get from this movie. What are you giving it?
Oh, I'm going first. I was entertained. I think it moves okay. But I sadly didn't think it entertained me as much as it probably did when I first saw it. So I think it was a little higher back in the 90s, but I'm going to have to only go 2.5 out of 5 for Die Hard 2.
Well, Die Hard 2, for me, you actually get the higher score. It gets 2.
Wait a minute,
stars.
you like this movie?
I do like
2
How
is
many
not.
times do we have to go through this? 2 is okay. 2 is okay.
No, it's not.
all right. It's all right. Die Hard 2 gets 2 stars.
I can't
from
believe
me.
you. I give it more stars, and you enjoyed it
Well,
more than me. This is whack.
You are D+D 2 review harder. That's what you are.
Apparently. All right, so I
So
enjoyed
2
it more,
stars.
apparently.
Yes, you did.
All right.
No, I was just thinking, and you know what? I did enjoy this movie, and I was going to give it a 3.
You keep saying that.
I do.
And 2 is like a...
I
don't... Oh, I don't want to see what that face looked
I
like.
promise you that this movie is good for a laugh and a good entertainment, but that one character and that one actor, what's his name
Enough
again?
with
Ashton
Art
Evans.
Evans.
Art Evans.
Enough with
Ashton
him.
Evans is just awful, and it brought it down a whole point. It was gonna be 3 until I realized, you know what, he's awful, so it went down to 2. Thank you so much for joining us, though. We do enjoy having you with us. Obviously, you know that we like to have a lot of fun at movies' expenses, and sometimes those movies are actually pretty decent. So tune in next week. You never know what holiday movie we're going to be checking out next. Thank you for joining us, and stay warm.
McLean, is this what you were expecting?
This is just the beginning.
Bruce Willis, Die Hard 2. Die Harder.
This is going to go horribly bad.